What's going on, guys? The Happy Hermit here. Here to give you guys a review of the Baker's Oven by Nectre out of Australia. This stove has been keeping us warm for about, I would say 2.5 years now, and could not be happier with the product. When we were looking for a stove, that would be a good heat source, as well as something that we could cook on, and ideally something we could bake on. If you've been looking at cook stoves at all, you know there's not a lot in the market that has both a cook surface and a place to bake. But this stove really fit the bill. Got some stuffed mushrooms here that the wife has been so kind as to prep for us, so I'm going to throw these in here today with the cast iron skillet. Now, the one thing that is a pain in the ass about this stove is that thermometer right there. Right now we're reading about, let's say about 220 degrees, give or take. It's probably somewhere in the ballpark of 300 degrees in there. Even the user's manual says that thermometer is going to be about 80 degrees off. So you really have to figure out all the quirks with it and figure out the best temperatures to cook with, because you can't just rely on this. It's not like an electric stove where you set it at 350 and call it a day. You've got to play with it, you've got to learn, and it really took a while to get the hang of cooking on here. But, that said, when you do figure it out, it works awesome. In terms of cooking up top, it's perfect. I mean, you can see what's going on, it's not hard to figure out. If you're good at cooking on an open fire, you can cook on this. There are 2 removable surfaces up top, so you can get direct flame on your cast iron skillet, or I sometimes like to set up a little grill up here. It just sits up top, and then I can cook some smokies, cook some burgers, whatever, and just let the flame get at them. Sure, the insurance company doesn't like you doing that, but that really doesn't bother me all that much. So, in terms of the firebox, this stove does have a very small firebox. You're looking at about a 12-inch log, and as a result, burn time is going to be reduced. If you're looking at a regular stove that you might go down to the fireplace shop, they're going to sell you a really efficient modern stove. It's going to have a big firebox. Usually 16, 18-inch log is not going to be a problem, and you can get those 8, 10, maybe 12-hour burn times out of an efficient stove. This stove, while it is efficient, you're not going to get those burn times simply because of the size of the firebox. So we find 12-inch logs are pretty well perfect. You set up some, a combination of poplar and some oak, mostly oak overnight. 6-7 hours is really all you're going to want to push it. Otherwise, you're getting up and 4 a.m. and you're fighting to get the fire going. You really want to be getting up every 6 hours at least, even with oak, just because of the size of the firebox. But aside from that, we really don't have any complaints. The cook surface is great. I find that if you're not using a trivet up top and you're just putting your pans directly on the surface, you are going to notice some rust. We've noticed this stove starting to rust up top. When I refill the kettle, it's a little bit wet on the bottom, the tap drips down the side, I put it up there, there's scratches, there's moisture, it's going to rust, but it's really not expensive or a big deal to recoat one of these stoves. You can find stove paint relatively cheap. You can buy it online, you can go down to the nearest hardware store. A hearth shop that sells fireplaces is going to be able to hook you up with that, so that's not really a big deal. As far as the glass door goes, this has a air wash system, so basically there's a little groove that runs along the top here. It's just a thin piece of metal. You can adjust it with a set of Allen keys, and there is a gap along the top that runs the whole length of this. If I look down straight at it, I can see the fire through the top of the door. It's not completely sealed. And what that does is you'll see the air flowing. Like if you have a really smoky fire when you're getting it going, it's real easy to see. And it's just coming down and cleaning that glass when you got that heat coming in there. So when you clean the glass, it's going to last a good couple days before you really have to clean it again. But the best way to clean these stoves, you don't need any fancy products, you don't need any chemicals. The ultimate best way to clean a dirty stove glass is a paper towel or a cloth, some water, and dip it in the ashes. I know it sounds ridiculous. Unless you've done it before, then you know damn well it's not ridiculous. That is the best way to get a glass stove clean. Another feature of this stove that's really awesome, this stove has a water jacket option for the back. So if you're off the grid, you know that solar is a very if you're heating water with electric heat, you know, you got an electric hot water tank, it's really taxing on a solar system, especially if you live in a cold climate. You know, there's not a lot of sun, you might luck out with 3-4 hours a day. You're just not going to power that, you know, that 2,000 watt element to heat your hot water. So with this stove, what they've done is they have a little tank you can get. We don't have it here, but we're going to have it in our new place. If you follow the channel, our shed to house off-grid setup out there. But what they do is you essentially take the back 2 fire bricks out, 2, 3, 3. You take the back 3 fire bricks out, and it's replaced by a tank. And out the back, you got your in, you got your out, and it's really that simple. You get a gravity-fed system. You're going to want to mount a hot water tank up higher than the stove, and the water's just going to flow. The heat's going to cause everything to flow nice. The only thing is you can't have a pressurized system. You know, there needs to be relief valves. You need to have it open up top. There's a number of ways to do it, but that's a whole nother story. But this stove can be used to heat all of your hot water. So in theory, you could get this stove for an off-grid cottage, and it will solve every problem for you. You can bake on it, you can cook on it, it will heat your place, and it's going to provide you with hot water. And if you go one step further, maybe you visit Tegmart and you get yourself a thermoelectric generator, you could set that up top here, trickle charge your battery bank, 50-60 watts of power, even after essentially if you get a 75 watt Teg generator, you're going to use a few watts for your circulating pump that's going to flow water through your Teg unit. But you should still be left with 50 watts, give or take, to trickle charge your battery bank. So you could have this stove, if you added a Teg generator, if you added a water jacket option, you could essentially cover your heat, your baking, and your hot water and your electricity entirely with this unit. So it's a really versatile stove for an off-the-grid application, and you can get away with doing a lot with this if that's what you want to do. Now, in terms of budget, this stove is one of the more expensive options, depending on how you look at it. It's a lot more money than, say, your standard, just little wood stove that the average guy is going to buy for his home. It's not $7,000 like the big, 5-foot wide units that have the warming box up top. But it is, we looked at around $4,000 Canadian for this unit. So that was after covering taxes, shipping, everything. We're about $4,000 bucks. That's not counting the install, the chimney, and any of that. That's just getting the stove here, getting it delivered, taxes in, settled, $4,000. That's about what this unit costs. So, depending on your budget, it might be a little bit on the high end, but let me tell you, it's absolutely worth it. I spent probably 2 months looking at all the different options for cook stoves. I researched everything in the market, and I literally found myself Googling Bakers Oven alternatives because $4,000 just wasn't in the cards for me. And one day I sat down and I was just thinking about it, and I thought if I keep looking for alternatives, at the end of the day, I'm just not going to be happy with the product that's not this stove. I'm always going to be comparing it to this stove. What if I would have got this stove? Why didn't I get this stove? I didn't want to settle. And when you get something like this that's going to last 25, 35, whatever, it's going to last many, many years. It's going to take care of you. You can spend the extra money. It's worth it in the long run. Get the product you want, get the product that's going to do the job, that's going to do a great job, and you're going to be happy with. So I would recommend, when it comes to shopping for a cook stove, get what you want and get what you need. Do it right the first time.
Cool.
So as far as heating is concerned, the house that we're in right now is 725 square feet. We live in Manitoba, Canada. It's a very cold climate. Essentially in the winter, it's not uncommon for it to get to minus 30 degrees Celsius all the way to minus 40, minus 45 Celsius. And it could stay that way for 4, 5, 6 days before it cools or warms up. And when I say warms up, I mean warms back up to minus 25. So we're in a cold climate. This stove, put it this way, right now I think it's about minus 12 outside. You can't see it, but our door is open about 6 inches, and the window on the other side of the room is open about 8 inches, and we're cooking in here. This stove heats that amount of space with no problem. I would probably feel comfortable putting this in 1,300 square feet, and I don't see there'd be much of an issue. If you're burning oak and you're keeping this thing rocking, it's going to keep you warm. I think most of the readings online are underestimating what this thing really does, because this thing throws some serious heat. Now that said, if you're in a larger home, maybe you've got 2,000 square feet or more that you want to heat and this isn't quite going to do it for you, they do have a big baker's oven now. They've released this, I think, in the last year or so because it wasn't around when we bought this unit. Essentially the same exact stove, just a little bit bigger. Picture this one on steroids. It's got a little bit of a larger burn box, so you can get those larger logs in there. You can get those longer burn times, and it's going to be a better option for you if you're looking to heat a large amount of space. Obviously, it's going to be priced a little higher. I think you're looking at about $1,000 more for the big baker's oven versus the standard size. I think the model number on this is the N350, and the larger one is the N500 or 550. I could be mistaken on that. I'll probably post some links down in the description to the manufacturer's website where you can check this unit out. And make the decision for yourself as to what size might be right for your needs. Functionality, the stove, the dampers on the front, you just have a spindle damper. You know, you open it up, we'll get the, that is hot. We'll get the fire rock in there, the damper's wide open. Now, there's a bypass damper on the top, and now what that does is when I lift that damper up, the smoke is diverted, and instead of going directly up and out the chimney, it's going to come around and it's going to circulate around the firebox and then out. And that's how you raise the temperature of your oven here, is you just pull that bypass damper up and you divert that smoke and that heat down, and this is going to start raising the temperature. When you get that up to temp, you're going to want to put your damper back down, send the smoke directly up. Not to say that this oven does not get hot when the damper is not up, it does, but it doesn't get 300 degrees hot. I would say, you know, it usually sticks in around, well, what it looks like as 150, but like we had discussed earlier, there's about an 80 degree variance there. It could be 80 degrees different from what it's reading. So very, very simple, very easy to use. You know, one damper if you want to adjust heat to the bottom, and another damper for controlling the fire, getting it rocking or dampering it off, slowing it down for night. Well, there you have it, guys. Those are my thoughts and my impressions on the Nectre Bakers Oven. At the end of the day, I'd really recommend the stove. Be sure to check out the other videos on the channel. We'll be making more videos in the future related to off-grid living and our transition to a fully off-grid lifestyle at our new place as we do a shed-to-house conversion. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.